It's Cougar Sports Saturday.
It's complete. Another touchdown!
Cougar Sports Saturday. A presentation of KSL Sports.
Left wing for three. He got it again!
BYU Sports Talk by Cougar fans for Cougar fans. Here are your hosts, Mitch Harper and Matt Baiamonte. On Utah's legacy home of the Cougars. KSL News Radio, 102.7 FM and 1160 AM.
Good afternoon, Cougar Nation. Welcome on in to Cougar Sports Saturday. 5 weeks from today, BYU football is back here on the legacy home of the Cougars, KSL News Radio. BYU Southern Illinois kicking off 5 weeks from today, August 31st, 6 o'clock kick. Pre-game will be at 4, then we'll get things started here on Cougar Sports Saturday, which every week we're holding it down here on the legacy home of the Cougars, noon to 3, talking all things BYU sports. Mitch Harper, Matt Baiamonte. Loaded show for you today. We got John Linehan from the BYU basketball program, assistant coach. He'll be joining us live this hour. Hans Olsen, color analyst for BYU Sports Network, to preview fall camp. And then Sam Farnsworth in Paris to talk Jimmer Fredette and Team USA 3-on-3. Loaded show.
With that said, Mitch, though, I think it's only fitting with football right around the corner to start things off talking about what's going to happen later this week down in Provo.
The starting lineup. A look at the stories making headlines right now. It's time for the starting lineup on Cougar Sports Saturday.
The off season. It's over. The season is upon us. Fall camp begins this week. And man, it's in one respect, Mitch, it's hard to believe that it's here. Football is back, but in another respect, it feels like it's been a long time since there's been BYU football. They did not play in a bowl game, and spring football even feels like it was a long time ago, but football is back this week.
It's exciting, and BYU has a lot of motivation to prove the doubters wrong this year as BYU enters the 2024 season. Pick 13th in the preseason 16-team Big 12. Expectations are low. Maybe the lowest I think I've ever seen for a BYU football team. You know, because there's been years in the past where they didn't finish great, but preseason expectations were always pretty modest. No one's expecting much from BYU this year, and a big reason for that, Matt, and we'll start things off in our fall camp preview, is at the quarterback position, and that spot has so many questions and uncertainty. They need answers quick. They've got 4 quarterbacks who've started games at the FBS level. What are your expectations going into fall camp with that quarterback battle?
I think it's a two-person battle. I think it's Retzlaff and Bohannon, and I really like the talent of Hillstead, but I think he's the next guy. I think you're working on getting him ready to be the next BYU quarterback. And if that happens later this year due to circumstance, whether it be injury or poor play, I'm not against that, but that's not what you want to do. Bring someone in post-spring football and hand them the keys. That's not ideal. If he's just clearly head and shoulders the best quarterback, then that's what you do. But going into this, I think it's just going to be a continuation of what we saw in the spring, which is I think Jake has the lead on Gary, and it's going to take Bohannon showing kind of what he had that last year at Baylor to even have a chance at winning this job. And you can't rule that out. I think Bohannon, as we've expressed on this show many times, first couple of weeks was kind of rough in spring ball, and then he showed signs of being a 4-star type player that he was at a high school towards the end of camp. He'll have to be great. And if Jake Retzlaff can just do what he did in spring football, I think he's the starting quarterback. There was so much time and effort put into developing this guy last year as the number 2 and then got all those starts at the end of the year. It's his job to lose, Mitch, and I'm okay with that because when you look at success this season and going forward for BYU football, they need to get back to what they had in the 2010s where there was a clear starter, but there was also someone waiting in the wings to be the future. We saw that with Zach, right? Zach came in. He was supposed to be behind Tanner. He got inserted a lot earlier than we thought due to injury and poor play. But after Zach, there was a clear guy that you wanted to be the next guy. Jaron Hall, and both of those guys went on to play in the league. If you have Jake be the starter and McKay be the next guy, then I think you sort of get back on that path. And then Gary in the mix as well as an insurance policy for injury or poor play.
One thing that gives me hope with the quarterback battle going into camp is that Kalani's 3 best teams have entered fall camps with quarterback competitions. You think about 2016, Taysom versus Tanner. 2020, it was Zach and it was Baylor Romney. Jaron was banged up. He was dealing with the hip. It felt like Zach was the guy, but they forced him to win the job, and that's why he wasn't initially a captain, and that became a big storyline when he was going through the draft process. But that team became a great team. And then 2021, it was a 3-man race between Jaron, Baylor Romney, and Jacob Conover, and then BYU became a 10-win team that year. That does give me hope because there has been a little bit of history where those best Kalani teams start with quarterback competitions, but the difference here is that all 3 of those winners of those jobs were NFL quarterbacks. Who's the NFL quarterback in this group?
Right.
And I don't see anyone right now that I say here on July 27th is a future NFL QB. And, if a guy like Keaton Slovis last year who looked like he could be an NFL guy, if he doesn't get a crack in the NFL, I don't think these guys as currently constructed to this point would be NFL guys. So that's what leaves you wondering what's going to happen here at this position. It's the most open I've ever seen from a BYU quarterback spot. I do agree that the top 2 are still going to be Bohannon and Retzlaff, however you want to slice it up. But I feel like the guy in the mix that I'm just fascinated going into fall camp is McKay Hillstead. Trayson Bourget in spring ball, I thought was good out of Western Michigan. But the fact that Aaron Roderick did not entertain the idea of him being in the top conversation coming out of spring, what changed in PRPs and summer conditioning that says now he's on even footing with Bohannon and Retzlaff, whereas McKay Hillstead is this kind of intriguing piece that BYU sought after and wanted to get. So I think he's the guy that, if you want to say, could get into the conversation to win the job, it's him. But right now I'm with you. I do agree that Jake Retzlaff, I would probably lean towards him. I thought that spring ball where he didn't have any interceptions, and Aaron Roderick made it clear too that it was aggressive play calling still. Like, that's what his messaging was. Kalani kind of gave us a little bit different conversation in our interview at Big 12 Media Day, where he's like, I want quarterbacks that are going to be aggressive, not just always protecting the ball. You got to have some aggressiveness to your play. Yeah. And I want that. I don't want these quarterbacks to be spooked by a pick, because it happens. You got to move on to the next play, but they got to get answers quick. And I don't expect a quarterback decision before at the end of fall camp. I think this could drag on to game week, but they got to get a clear picture of, like, we can trust these guys and throw a full playbook at these quarterbacks this season.
It's going to be a lot of fun. I mean, it's going to be fun to watch, and that's clearly the biggest storyline is this quarterback battle. Here's another interesting storyline that I'll be watching in the coming weeks, Mitch, is what to make of that tight end position. They have a new coach. They have a lot of familiar faces there, but Isaac Rex has moved on. There's not a lot of production at all in terms of career receptions coming back in this room. And you do move Keanu Hill there. Still kind of hard for me to grasp Hill being a true tight end. I kind of view him more in the mold of in that go fast, go hard offense, like Brett Thompson. That's a deep cut where he was a tight end, but he's not really a tight end.
Sure,
he's a pass receiving option in that tight end slot position. Also a little bit like Marcus Matthews, right? Who sort of played in that role. We'll have to see. It's going to be fascinating, and I also want to see. Does Aaron Roderick and this offense, do they make this position a priority? Because I feel like, has BYU had a great offense? Can you think of a BYU offense that you would consider great that had mediocre tight end play? It's just not coming to mind to me. You think about that 2020 offense, which was great. Is that the weakest tight end play they've ever had? And yet they had Isaac Rex, who had double-digit touchdowns.
The only one that would come to mind is 2013 Go Fast, Go Hard, where it was Taysom and Jamal, and there was really no tight end to speak of, really. Right. I mean, it was just receivers, but that was just kind of a unique in that moment. Go fast, go hard, where they're going 100 plays a game almost. But yes, you got to have great tight end play, and I do think the nice thing is that BYU's got some really intriguing options. Keanu Hill, I think, will be productive. They got him listed right now at the 240 pounds. You wonder if that is exactly where he's been. I know they brought that up back in December that he's been playing at 240. I'd be curious to see what he looks like going into fall camp next week. but big-bodied guy, 6'4", 240, heading into his final season at BYU. And then I think some of the young guys, Jackson Bowers, Reiner Swanson, what are they going to become this year? Is Jackson Bowers more than just simply a blocking tight end? Can he evolve in his role? And he was banged up in spring ball. But Reiner Swanson, to me, is one of those guys that could be, anything is possible for him in his BYU career. He could be one of those just special BYU tight ends. And I just think he's going to be so impactful for this BYU team. And then you still have got, Ethan Erickson. You've got, Mata'ava, Ta'ase, Ray Paulo. But I think that the top guys are Keanu Hill and Reiner Swanson. And I'm optimistic about that group. I think the tight ends can be a strength of this BYU team this year.
We'll have more on this. I have some more thoughts on Swanson and Bowers, Mitch, but I'll save that until later in the show when we give our bold predictions for fall camp. We'll do that in the third hour. What's another storyline that interests you? I know you put out a really nice piece on KSLSports.com, a lot of things you're watching for. What are a few of those other things?
I think the cornerback position is going to be an area that I find very interesting because there's options. It's not the classic BYU cornerback situation where you've got one guy and who's going to be the dude that steps in and saves the position. You got to figure out who that other cornerback is going to be besides Jacob Robinson. I think the favorite's probably Mark Collins from Weber State, just because Jay Hill trusts those Weber State transfers. I don't think he's as on the same level of maybe a Eddie Heckard, Camden Garrett, but I mean, why can't he, be maybe an honorable mention All Big 12 guy like those guys were? Maybe I just don't. Those guys were really good last year, and it gets kind of forgotten how good they were because BYU struggled a lot last season. But Mark Collins, I think, will be someone I'm curious to see. We didn't see him in spring ball. And then Marcus McKenzie working his way back from injury. He missed spring ball too. And then Maury Bamba, Evan Johnson. Jonathan Cabea comes in from the high school ranks, didn't participate in spring ball, but a speedster. He could factor into the return game in special teams. And then Trey Alexander, freshman, got an incredible, build. He's got to add a little more weight, really thin for a freshman. You expect that coming in from Georgia. But he's kind of got that moxie and that attitude that you really want from a star cornerback. So, again, there's options. And Jaden Dunlap, too, who was banged up last season. So, but just got to start to really shape that second cornerback depth chart because Jacob Robinson is going to be one of the best cornerbacks in the Big 12 this season.
Speaking of shaping the depth chart, the safety battle is going to be interesting for me. Not because there's unknown quantities there, but how does that fill out? Because so many guys got playing time last year. That's a really battle-tested group. Plus, you get Micah Harper back. Does he just slide out in and pick up where he left off? What do you make of a guy like Crew Wakely, who had a great year? Talon Alfrey, who was getting rave reviews last fall camp before injury set him out for the majority of the season. Ethan Slade, where does he fit in? And then some young guys, Preston Rex, Raider DeMooney. Then you got the true freshman coming in as well. So there's a lot to be shaped in that safety room. There's two positions, and maybe a third safety fits in certain circumstances, a nickel or dime package, but there's a lot of options there, and I'm curious how it shakes out.
And it's nice to have those options because, Micah Harper, I think in a perfect situation, fills that Eddie Heckard nickel role because that's a critical piece to Jay Hill's defense. And when you do go with those 5 defensive back looks, he can anchor that spot. And, a freshman in Tommy Parasis, I think he's going to be someone that is in that 2 deep. He was one of the standouts of spring, and my early projections coming out of spring, I felt he was a starter. Alongside Micah Harper. Now, Talon Alfrey, he seems like he's back to full strength. The coaching staff really trust him, and his health seems like it's in a good place right now. He's healthy. He's a great athlete. You're going to probably start him with Micah Harper, but you got options, like you said. And Raider DeMooney, I think he's ready to take a big jump. One of the hardest-hitting players on the team a season ago, but he's got more to his arsenal than just hitting. And you got to have that in the back end of that defense at the safety spot. And then Falatau Satuala, 4-star recruit in the 2024 class, highest-rated guy that BYU signed, freaky athlete to where it's hard to imagine him not, contributing in some way. But, you've got options, and I love the competition. And Crew Wakely, you bring him up, he's a guy that, he was named to the Shrine Bowl 1,000 player list, and I was kind of happy because of that, because I thought Crew was a pretty good player last season, and he was a guy that didn't even expect to continue playing football. Fesi Satake, of all people, called him up and said, hey, why don't you come down to BYU? He was done with football altogether, gave it a shot. Jay Hill brought him on as a safety, liked what he saw in him as an athlete, and because of all the injuries, Crew Wakely worked his way up to a starter role at times, and I thought played pretty well. I mean, he had moments where he had some costly penalties. There were some celebration penalties, I remember, but I think Crew Wakely's a good player. I like that safety unit a lot, and I think they are going to have good depth at that position. I think it's going to be a position of strength as well.
Let's take our first break, Mitch. On the other side, we'll give you some players, under-the-radar players. Maybe they're not household names, but to keep an eye on in fall camp and maybe the season. A lot of fall camp talk, a lot of football talk today on Cougar Sports Saturday. Back after this.